All right, everybody, welcome to MovieStrange. Drew, how's
Hello.
it going?
It's going all right. How are you doing?
I'm all right. You had a good week?
Yeah, I did have a good week, and
We made you
I'm,
watch the Oscars.
oh, you didn't make me. I wanted to watch it. I'm not saying it was worth watching, but I did watch it. I watched the whole thing, right to the end where all the boring paid off and was really boring.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, Steven Soderbergh. How do you spell his name? I say it wrong.
Soderbergh.
Soderbergh.
Steven Soderbergh.
Directed and produced this thing. And they did that whole thing. Why they changed... They had to... Like, normally, the best picture is picked at the end. Okay?
Yeah.
But they made this gamble that Chadwick Boseman was going to win.
Chadwick Boseman. Yeah.
Well, what did I do? Just say the name, please.
You Ralphed it. His name. The gentleman's name is
Ralphed.
Chadwick Boseman.
There you go.
Chadwick
That gentleman
Boseman.
who's passed away, unfortunately, they thought
Listen,
was going to win.
They bet, like you're saying, they bet.
Yeah.
And they lost. But it's silly because when you have these award shows, there's one award that's the big one. It's naturally the final one that you'd never think you'd have to explain that to anybody. And
Right.
they decided to do something different. The problem is everything is different because of the year and because of how you had to do things. You couldn't fill an auditorium with people. The thing that really I didn't care for was they didn't really show clips of things. Like they didn't show. They sometimes in the other broadcasts they'd say, here's a look at Best Picture nominee Sound of Metal, and then they'd show some clips. But then if they nominate Riz Ahmed, they'll show a clip of his performance.
Yeah.
If they show Paul Raci, they'll show a clip of. But they didn't do that for all of them, and they didn't do it consistently across different things. And it was I don't know. It was weird.
So what was the? What do you think the reasoning was? Why not show all of them? What was the? Was time or what was it?
I think it was just I'm just inventing this, but maybe everything is so different. Let's just try some stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things they did that was really different that I didn't like was the In Memoriam was they put on a Stevie Wonder song and then they crashed through the list. And, if you're going to honor people who are dead, you have a lot of people that are well known to the public, a lot of behind the scenes and below the lines people as well that deserve respect for that as well. But I mean, there are scenes you can show or want to show of Christopher Plummer, of Chadwick Boseman, of all these different people. And that's actually kind of a nice thing.
Right.
And it's funny because every year there's always, this person, they didn't include this person, they didn't include that person. I don't know if they included people or not. I mean, I saw DMX. I saw all these people. Yeah, it was because it was so fast.
Well,
and if you got
amazing.
included, I wouldn't feel like it was a special thing.
I think they learned because nobody watched it, or 10 million people watched it out of.
Yeah, it was the lowest ratings ever.
It's amazing.
But we on this show, we generally discuss movies that they get nowhere near the Oscars, although some of the people who make these movies have gone on to make movies that are win more mainstream awards and that sort of thing. But we are in no danger of
Sniffing the Oscars, no.
going of Oscar
Especially this
movies.
one. Let's talk about this one now that you brought it up. Here are the words from last week or the last show. I don't even know what week it is. So these are the 8 words. So I picked wet T-shirt, teacher savage. Okay,
I thought you might.
Obviously, the wet T-shirt was the one that got me. But what was this film that you brought?
Well, this movie is from 1985, which is when it premiered on HBO, and 1986, which is when it was out in the theaters in Australia, called Fortress. There are a lot of movies called Fortress. There's one with Christopher Lambert, and there's a bunch of other ones. This is honestly, I mean, this is my favorite one. Although a number of them are good, they only share the title in common, and that is a great, almost like trashy exploitation poster that's even more than what the movie is. So that's a really fun thing.
Okay, it's great. Who's that? Tell me who that is right up front. Who's the actress right up front?
That's Rachel Ward.
Right.
Is the lead. The premise of the movie, very quickly, is it's in the Outback in Australia. There's a literal one-room schoolhouse. Rachel Ward is the teacher. She lives, with a family of one of her students, and she goes and she teaches kids. So the kids are like, ages 8 to 14 or something like that. And there's 9 or 10 of the kids, and these guys show up and abduct them, and they all wear masks of cartoon characters and Santa Claus. And it's about this teacher trying to keep her students safe from these guys who are holding them for ransom and getting away and staying away. And It's a tight thriller. It's fun. It's definitely gets more nasty than I expected when I was watching it. And the reason that I'm familiar with this movie is my wife, Kelly, she has an Uncle Bob. And back in the day when Kelly first saw this movie in, I think, second grade, Uncle Bob would record movies off of HBO, which she didn't have, and videos off of MTV. She didn't have cable, and send her, like every week, would send her VHS tapes, some of which we just recently found, actually. So she watched a lot of movies that I think would be fair to call inappropriate. Not a dig on Bob or her parents, but these are some pretty crazy movies, and this one was a favorite. She watched it many times growing up. She turned me onto it after I met her. I had never heard of it. I had never seen it. So I've seen it a number of times over the years. And it's one of her favorites. She said it taught her to be self-reliant as a little kid, just the idea that you should be able to take care of yourself. Because there's a lot of different kinds of vulnerability in this movie and a number of different responses to that vulnerability. And in some ways, it's smarter than you would think based on the description that I just gave.
It is. I have a couple questions, though. All right.
Sure.
So the first one, Uncle Bob sending... How old was Kelly at the time?
Second grade, I think.
Second grade.
What is
so
that,
that's what?
8?
8 years old. Okay, that's question number 1. 2, this aired on HBO, right? Back early
yes,
HBO.
It premiered on HBO first. It's an HBO. I think the logo at the beginning is HBO Premiere.
Yeah.
So that's HBO Original Films back at the beginning of when they were doing that stuff.
Right.
They weren't just showing movies that were from the studios. They were actually starting to do original content. So this is one of those movies that is early. It's just early in their development as an original movie maker.
And you said this film came out on HBO first and then went to Australia, or was it in Australia first and then came here?
No, I believe that it was on HBO in let's say fall of 1985. I think it was a good Thanksgiving movie. It's a nice family movie.
Well, let's do this.
And then it came out in the summer in 1986 in Australia.
All right. I want to show the trailer, which is very short. I found a short trailer on YouTube.
Great.
Let's watch this and we'll talk about it after that.
At a one-room schoolhouse in the Australian Outback on a not quite ordinary day, 9 children and a teacher began to learn the lesson they would remember the rest of their lives.
They're going on a picnic.
A teacher and 9 children stalked by terror.
You know how to catch a rabbit?
No, sir.
See, rabbits can't look straight ahead. So you come up at him from his blind spot, which is head on.
We've got to fight them! We outnumber them 4-1!
Can the tools of childhood be forged into weapons? Can courage build a fortress? Fortress, a lesson in survival.
All right, before we go too much further, because I have a ton of questions, all right? We're going to just say this. Spoilers out the wazoo, okay? Not that it matters. This came out in whatever you said, at 1980, whatever. All right? This movie, okay. I don't know. I'm weirdly, I understand the idea that it's Kelly might have saw this and go, I can be self-reliant. I can be but it's a weirdly like this, because Rachel Ward is the lead that plays the teacher. Rachel Ward, who's cute as hot and cute. I can't hear your mic.
I was being polite during the trailer.
Well, that was good. That was good of you. But let's talk about it.
Yeah, no, Rachel Ward is gorgeous, and we'll talk about. I think that her beauty is used in a specific way in the movie as well. But go ahead.
I think. Okay, specifically, yes. I mean, give a little more. Okay, this was based on basically a true story, right?
Yes, this is based on a true story. There was a guy so this movie was 85. So I guess early 70s, there was a guy who actually abducted a one-room schoolhouse full of kids in the Outback to hold them for ransom. And he didn't get away with it. He got arrested. He actually ended up going to prison. This was a well-known case in Australia. And while he was in prison, he planned and executed a successful escape from prison. And while he was on the run, he went to another school and abducted a bunch of children and a teacher, and ended up actually, I guess he carjacked some other people. At one point, I believe he might have had even 16 hostages, and it was just him. This movie is about 4 men that control this group of about 10 hostages, or try to. And I guess the hostages at a certain point just said, well, this is what do we let, and they left.
Right.
And then he got arrested again. So he's a well-known criminal in Australia. He, as far as I know, he did these, as far as these cases, he did these obviously violent things, but he didn't end up killing any of the hostages or anything like that. Whereas this movie is considerably more violent.
Well, except, again, spoiler alert, the only ones that got killed were, well, a helpful old couple and the criminals. Yeah. None of the kids. Now, there's a kid, Sid. Sid is the young kid who starts his film by shooting a fox in the chicken cage, okay? Yep. So you already know that
he's the most mature, resourceful of the kids.
2 things happen at the front of this film that set the whole film up. Sid is a resourceful one killing the fox.
I got him!
And Rachel Ward, she can take a cold shower. She has no problem. There's no heat in the shower that she took in the house that she was living in. I guess she's living in. She's a teacher that lives with her students.
Yeah, I couldn't speak to the formal arrangement of whatever it's called, but definitely, I'm sure she came out there to teach the community, and part of the housing was you live with one of the.
So she lived with Sid and the young Tommy, little redheaded Tommy. And they make a specific thing. You never see her. You only see in her back, but she's in a cold shower, which sets up something that happens later in the film. I don't know I can't. Part of me, I felt like with? I felt like I was Sid in this film. Okay, Sid, the like 16 or 15 or 4. I don't know how old that kid was. 14.
I think you're supposed to when I believe
there's a scene where right.
Well, Sid is a young man. Let's say 14, 15.
Well, I got to back up one step. I don't know the motivation of these people who kidnap these people. They said they're going to go for a ransom, but
yeah. Well, that's the thing. They said that they wanted to get a ransom. They wanted to get money. I don't remember if they talk about a specific amount. At one point, the real guy asked for some millions of dollars or something before.
There's no amount. They're going to go for a ransom.
But it doesn't really matter, because the way that the movie is set up, it's from the perspective, almost exclusively, if not completely, from the perspective of Rachel Ward's character and the students that she's trying to control. So all that really matters is that these men are endangering them, and they're serious. And even before they killed an elderly couple that took the hostages in after they escaped the first time, they're danger. And that's why the way that the movie proceeds and the way that it ends is very sort of simple and primal. This is about a fight to survive, and that's really it. That's what it's about. Now, along the way, you have, I think, a pretty honest depiction of what it's like to be a teenage kid in a situation that's dangerous and exciting, and also your teacher is hot and keeps taking her clothes off to go swimming or that sort of thing.
Not go swimming. She's going to rescue them in the water.
She went swimming to see if they could escape.
Right.
And then the only reason she kept her bra on the second time is because there was a girl who was nervous about taking her top off, so she kept her shirt on. There's a lot of little moments that feel very real.
A lot of little moments.
Adolescents are and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, no. If you watch that movie as Sid. I have too.
I was Sid. I'm going to say I was Sid.
I mean, she's very sexy, and she's very capable, and Sid admires her and feels tingles and things, and that's real. That's honest.
The same tingles. I was the same. I said, Sid, I know how you're feeling right now.
Well, that's the thing. Also, like, they are in actual mortal danger, but you still got time to be hot for teacher, and that's not unrealistic when you're 15 or 59 or whatever.
You keep saying mortal danger. I still can't figure out.
Is it too prurient for you? Like, this is still an HBO movie.
If I knew that word, what that word meant, what's that word mean?
Salacious.
Well,
graphic.
The motivations of the guys were one thing, but okay, I'm just going to say this. Yes, it was hot as hell. Rachel was hot. But
Yeah.
the situations they were in and the way she was acting, part of me, when I watch a film, it's hard for me to get out of it.
I still don't know what your criticism is. I still you haven't gotten there yet.
I just don't like. Okay, there's a couple of Chekhov gun moments, right? One at the beginning and one at the end. Okay. Mm-hmm. They show those the schoolroom they're in. There's these bottles of something in water, something
Like specimens. Yeah,
specimens.
It's like science experiment looking.
Okay, so they show that as the guys are kidnapping them, they show that those specimens.
Right.
And then at the end of the film, okay, we'll just say this. It turned into a the fortress was the last place that these people. Okay, let's just say this. So the guys put them in a cave at the beginning, and once they kidnap them, they shove them in a cave. They figure out a way to escape out of that cave. By the way, the whole trope of the candles that last forever and lights that last forever drive me crazy. But okay, so she finds that place where she can swim out in cold water, and she mentions, well, I take cold showers, and Sid's like, well, what are you going to do? And she strips right in front of this poor kid, and you can see he's confused. Am I supposed to look at her? I'm feeling really weird about this, but she's super hot. Who would not look at her? And while she's swimming underwater, I'm going, I know her bra's off, but is her underwear off too? I can't figure out. So I'm in Sid's position. I'm feeling like this.
It sounds like you were enjoying the film on several levels simsimultaneously.
Several levels. Meanwhile, I'm going, she's swimming way too much. There's no way like somebody can breathe that long underwater. Now the reality's kicking in. But who cares about that? Because she's naked. And then they keep throwing in these weird. On. What's that?
That's probably what they were leaning on. You're not going to worry about she holding her breath for 2.5 minutes because look, she's in her bra.
I know this movie's about the primal spirit, and they Lord of the Flies. They survived, and the whole point at the end of the film that the detectives come in and they're asking them, I think you guys were too brutal on the guys that kidnapped you and shot the old lady, and how the whole now they're this killer community. I can't and explain to me that last shot. Wait, the last shot where they zoom in on those specimens, was the guy's brain in there? What was the deal? What was the purpose of that?
I believe it was his heart.
Oh, his heart.
And yeah, see, you're talking about it a little differently than I look at it, which is it's not about some sort of primal survival thing. The movie is about fighting to survive. It's got that Lord of the Flies feel to it in the way that the kids act and stuff. But the movie ultimately is do whatever it takes to survive, which the operating word is savage. Because in the end of the movie, when the survivor, Santa Claus, when he comes in to get them, and he's outnumbered, but he's also armed. I could say the kids and the teacher, they overcome him. But they don't overcome him. They destroy him. They beat him and stab him and club him, like to the point where you see kids gleefully, like Hunger Games looking stuff, or Battle Royale. They are just like chopping and stabbing over and over, and they're smiling and they're so excited. And the guy's already dead, and his eyes are empty and stuff. And they're literally, because at that point I think it sounds a little more graphic than it is, because actually
they don't show
it was way more extreme than I expected, but I believe they're basically going at him center mass. So they tore his heart out because they defeated him, and that's what's in the jar. And one of my favorite scenes in the movie, it isn't the scene of the wet outfits and that sort of stuff, although I like those. It's that scene that you mentioned where detectives come to follow up about what happened to this guy's body and everything, and the audience sees it first, and then the cops notice it. While these cops are basically telling the teacher, I'm not sure your story really makes sense. You want to add anything? The kids are slowly lining up around them, in the classroom, and you see it happening, and you go, oh wow, this is a different energy than they've had the whole movie. And then the cops notice it. They're like, well, I guess we have to go now.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than creepy kids like.
Yeah,
Children of the Corn, all that stuff.
Okay, let's go outside. But that's the thing; it's not magic. They have been through something. They were in actual danger.
I got it.
They fought back and they survived.
You know what?
What I think is interesting about the movie is that it is actually much more extreme than I expected it to be, as far as when it's actually violent. Like the elderly couple being killed is not Like they blow holes in them with shotguns. It's not fun, graphic Mortal Kombat type of violence. It's also not, the A-Team or something. I mean, it's quite violent and bloody. And then
it's brutal.
The way that these guys, these kidnappers, they end up killing a couple of them, and then some of them kill each other. Because their plans are going wrong as these kids are not as malleable as they hoped. And that's a trope that has been in a lot of movies where
which
somebody
trope?
kidnaps. Well, I'm going to tell you, somebody kidnaps somebody, or somebody breaks into somebody's house, and then the person who's doing the crime, they're in way more trouble because they didn't realize that in their house is somebody that's more dangerous, or they kidnapped somebody that is actually going to turn the tables on them, that kind of stuff. And that's a kind of thriller that I enjoy. I think that's fun. So,
but they kept doing.
This is not a cult. This is not a cult movie, but it is. It's a real exploitation movie.
It's a weird one. This is not just cult. This is weird films too. All right,
it's strange.
So there's that whole young girl, who the whole time.
The student,
the older girl that's in the class with her.
Yeah, Norelle.
Who. That she's feeling threatened, and Rachel Ward, they weren't too graphic about. I mean, they were. You knew that there was danger with the older lady, like Rachel Ward's character, and this woman Noelle.
The kidnappers implied that they could be raped. Sure.
Well, she grabbed at one point. The kidnapper grabs Rachel Ward's boob, and she.
Mm-hmm.
But then they drop in the poor girl. She called it the curse, so she was having her period. And it's like I'm confused. The movie confused me in so many different.
Confused you?
Well, because I was super turned on by Rachel Ward.
Do you not know about the women's monthly cycle? Was you as surprised as Norelle?
That's not the. But why drop that in the middle of this film? Am I turning into my brother?
I think they drop it in the middle of the film because these are adolescent kids.
Right.
That are going through regular teenage stuff.
Right.
And that doesn't stop when they're in this situation. So that makes them more relatable.
You're really making this into a life lesson. This is a life lesson.
Well, no, but it's not a life lesson. It's, I think, a level of reality in what's basically a crazy exploitation movie, because the kid doesn't want to die, but he's also going to notice that his teacher is stripping down in front of him to try and save their lives by swimming out. And Norelle doesn't want to, have to deal with all these challenges and problems. But if
while
she was
she's
still
escaping
at school,
from
or she was out there, she got her period.
Right.
And that makes it almost more real, more relatable that these are real people going through this, and it's a specific storytelling decision, I think, that works. Because
what's the storytelling?
You watched it as Sid.
I was Sid.
Right.
From okay. But
what is what?
Half those kids should have died. You know that, right?
Probably.
Half of them should have died just from the exposure in the water, all this stuff how many. The other thing I couldn't get out of my head is the food can't stay dry with all the water. I mean, that's part of my problem is I couldn't get out of the reality of what's going on outside of the boner I'm having because I'm watching Rachel Ward take her clothes off.
Yeah,
but their sandwiches can't stay dry when they're swimming in all that water. Matches can't stay dry.
Yeah, that's totally fair to have that reaction. I mean, it's a movie, and sometimes they want you to suspend
disbelief.
I know. And
I know.
Sometimes you notice that they want you to suspend it, and then you can't do it, and that's fair.
And why would those guys keep coming after these guys when they escape so many times?
Well, because they're only doing it for money, and now they've committed a crime. If these people, they won't know their faces, but if they go back and tell the police we got kidnapped, they're definitely not going to get their money, and they might be in more trouble. So that's the thing. There's a whole other story in this movie that we see almost none of, which is who these guys are.
Right.
We don't know who they are. We don't know how they came up with it. We hear them arguing a little bit to the point where one of them kills the other. Like, we're not doing this. We got to get out of here. We just killed these people. We said we weren't going to kill anyone. Well, I'll kill you, that kind of stuff. But there's a whole world of those characters, and we never spend any time inside of their world. When they're taunting the kids, the surviving guys are taunting the kids at the fortress, and screaming out Norelle's name and all that kind of stuff to psych them out. We don't see those guys. We just hear them. It's all from the perspective of the kids. It's all from the perspective of Rachel Ward. So that's just a point of view choice.
Yeah.
But those guys, they're clearly not all murderers. They want to make money by kidnapping people, which I don't know how much money you think you can make kidnapping students in a school in the outback of Australia. I didn't really think too much about that. I didn't worry about that. But they're also obviously desperate. So everybody in the movie is desperate. And the kids ended up being desperate enough to murder their way out of it, and they're justified. Except, are they justified in being that savage? Are they justified in having the guy's heart in a jar in their classroom? And I watch it and I go, I don't know if it's right, but it sure is satisfying.
No, that scene at the end, you're right. The scene at the end where they surround the cops, where the cops are in there, and the cops were getting freaked out. Like he even said to the one kid, boy, you really were good sneaking behind me like that. I didn't even hear you coming. That was cool. And they're talking about the realism of it. You know, there are kids that you get to know more than the other kids. I mean, you're not going to I can't name all the characters, that kind of stuff. But like, there's the one kid that's the sort of, he's fat, unhappy, the bully, kid, and he's a bully. Well, he's not a bully by the end of the movie because you learn about him. Like, he doesn't know how to swim, so Sid helps him get through it, and he ends up this bully sort of softens and ends up helping out the other kids, that kind of stuff. And I mean, that's just standard a kid movie, teen movie, real life kind of stuff. It's just Goonies,
this happens to be in an exploitation film. Yeah, it's Goonies, it's all that stuff. So it's fun. It's very 80s in that way, for sure.
I don't know why I'm having I felt weird. I felt weird because I was literally hot for teacher. Like, I'm looking at Rachel Ward.
Why is that weird? You're supposed to be. The movie manipulates you by telling you, "Here is a sexy lady. Enjoy." I mean, that's just what.
Yeah,
the movie
but then
does.
she's
That's
getting
an
sexually.
exploitation movie.
It's this whole. It was.
Well,
bad.
you didn't find it attractive when she got groped.
No.
You saw a beautiful
Definitely
woman
when she was
take her
swimming in the
clothes off
water,
and said,
definitely
"That is attractive."
Until she banged
she's
her
a
head and
beautiful
she
lady.
couldn't breathe. I mean, that was tough. Watching her. Deal with all that stuff. How do you find? So Kelly introduced you to this film.
Yes. From her childhood.
Yeah. The amount of films you watch and how you find these things, it just amazes me. And they're quirky,
I just
and
love
they're
movies.
like, I would never even heard of this film. And I'm familiar with Rachel Ward because she, Sharky's Machine, one of my favorite Burt Reynolds films, and she was in All the Right Moves, and I know Rachel Ward and Thornbirds and all that, but like, these are amazing films that you just pluck out of the air and you go, oh, well, Kelly showed me this and I watched it 4 times. Why would you watch this more than once? Which is what I want to know.
Because it's a good thriller. It's nasty. It's fun. It's a pretty tight example of a script. It's I like that it combines, because again, it's not I don't have this experience every time because I've seen it the first time, but you've got very relatable, kids growing up stuff. You've got danger that you understand, and then you have this really crazy savagery at the end, which I think it works in the movie. There's a lot of ways that could not have worked, but I think they pulled it off. And so it was essentially a kind of a twist ending I didn't see coming. So I enjoyed watching it, and then when I watched it again, I enjoyed watching it. I mean, when I watched it before this episode, before we recorded this, I haven't seen it in a few years. I was able to track it down on DVD and get it for Kelly, I don't know, 10 years ago, a long time ago. And so she said, you should probably bring Fortress. That would be really fun. And I said, I was thinking about that, and that'll give us an excuse to watch it again because we haven't watched it in a long time. Yeah. It's just a good thriller. I enjoy it.
Yeah, well, and also the kids, I have to admit this, the kids were not annoying little shits that are in most of these kid movies. Mm-mm. They were not, they seemed like real kids. And they may have been, for all I know. That little kid that kept crying, and little Tommy that got his shoulder shot.
They got shot.
But some of the motivations, again, I don't want to separate myself from what was going on in the film, but that one guy sits in the barn with them because he was cold. And they're also wearing those masks that in later films keep cropping up, right? Those the main creepy guy was wearing a Father Christmas mask.
Yep.
Right? Father Christmas, and he was the guy that ended up getting pummeled at the end, but
it's funny you mentioned that because you said about that guy, like, why would he sit down at the fire with them? He would sit down at the fire with them because he is actually cold, and because they're just kids and some lady, and because he has a gun. So they outsmarted him because they knew that he would see them as a level or a low level or no level of threat. The same way that they put those masks on, because if the guy in the first time you see them in the movie, one of the kids says, "I see somebody outside, like a duck mask, somebody outside." I can't remember the name of the character. It's like a Daffy Duck type of character.
That's Vernon Wells.
Well, yeah, and then the teacher looks out the window and she doesn't see anything, and she turns around, and then the guy steps. It's in the trailer. He steps into the window behind her, so all the kids are like, oh, and then she turns around and he's there. Now, if that man just stood there with a shotgun and pointed it at her, that would be scary. But he did it in a mask of a children's character because he knew that would be more scary. Right. So everybody's kind of saying, I know who I'm dealing with. I know what I'm going to do. So they did it to be scarier. They dressed up like these characters that the kids would say, oh, it's Father Christmas. I mean, they probably ruined Santa for all these kids.
Yeah.
And then the kids turned it against them. Right. The kids said, oh, we're just kids and it's cold and, do you want to sit with us? And then,
that gun looks super cool. Him. How do you use that gun? Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's a movie. It's a movie, and it's an exploitation movie. So it's not as what is going on here as something like The Devil's Honey. No.
This is definitely this had an arc, and it
that's
very
not a knock on The Devil's Honey, by the way. I'm just saying.
No knock at all.
Broad spectrum. No, it's a broad spectrum.
It's Lord of the Flies, but I kept. The title was like, okay, is this a fortress they're going to be in? Oh no, this is a fortress. No, it's not the barn. Oh. Now I got it. This is a fortress because they put the moat in front, and this is their last stand, and the kids knocking the rocks down.
If they called it fortresses,
fortresses might have worked. But there are a lot of because I put this on my Plex, and it goes out and looks for the title, and it was Fortress with Christopher Lambert and Fortress with. Like it was all these other films. I kept going, no, it's Rachel Ward's supposed to be in this one. I want to see Rachel Ward, which I'm glad I did.
It's funny you say that because I've definitely got some movies that I put on Plex and it automatically matches them. And then I have to go in and fix it.
Yeah.
Because it either can't find it, so I have to choose one of the other databases, or it picks the wrong one, like Fortress.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's clearly just the title. It's not like all three movies named Fortress have the same running time or the same cast or whatever. It just picks a fortress. And I'm sure if I said the movie Fortress, if you had heard of any of them, it's probably the Christopher Lambert sci-fi one, which I have seen and I have no memory of. This one I remember.
Yeah.
So, it's
I'm going to remember this fun. one. I don't think like you. I don't think I'm going to watch it again. I may. I don't know.
I waited 10 years in between viewings. And that was
maybe
fun too,
that's the thing. Is this typically Australian? This kind of sort of it was very matter of fact. It's like there was a very matter of fact kind of just standard. This is what happens in the Outback. Like even when the guys came in and were attacking them and kidnapping them, she was very matter of fact about the whole thing. And I don't know if that's an Australian thing or what.
I can't speak to that culturally, except the idea, I think, of Australians in the world is that they are, people who can look after themselves. They're rugged. They're individualists. If you're a kid in the Outback, like if this was a story about a kid in school in Silver Spring, it wouldn't start with them shooting a fox to protect the chicken coop. Like these are already kids that live a life that's more rural and more self-sufficient and all that kind of stuff. And I have no idea who the kidnappers are watching the movie. They could be from the town. They could be people from the city. They could be people who heard the story of the real guy and said, I think we could do that. You don't know. But they got outmaneuvered by these kids from the kids from the Outback. And I'm sure there's some stereotypical Australian view of who lives in the Outback in
I hate to do
Alice Springs versus Sydney or something. But
I hate to do this, but I keep doing it. But it's a bit Home Alone-ish, right? It's like the guys walked right into.
Yeah, they set traps and they worked.
I know, but that last guy who ran in,
when they're making all the traps, it's very much like the Ewoks.
They're very real. But the last guy who ran in I don't know why he even ran into the thing, and he tripped.
Because they're just kids, dude.
I got it. Okay.
How bad could it be? And then they cut his heart out and put it in a jar.
They did. I think they probably all sipped on it too. They didn't really, because she really, by the end of that, those guys were a team. Those guys were ready to go. That's the new A-team. They could have done a whole series of these guys going out and going into towns and saving everybody.
Well, and since it's me, I do want to mention that one of the kidnappers was played by Vernon Wells.
Yeah.
Vernon Wells played Wes, who was in Road Warrior. The
Which one
leader
was
of the
Wes?
villains is Lord Humongous, and Wes is the one who is his dog of war, the lead guy, the scariest guy, the one who has the boyfriend that gets killed by the boomerang.
Oh,
Like the crazy one who leaps. When you first see him, he leaps over he drives in and then it crawls out of the fortress, and he's the one that ends up, being the final villain that they face in the truck in the final chase. And he was also in Commando and Weird Science and a bunch of stuff. And he's like a cartoonishly Australian Hollywood type of image.
But you don't even know he's in a mask the whole time. He was the duck mask.
You don't know. You don't know. Yeah, I think he's the duck. I think he's the duck. Republican duck or whatever they call it. Those characters, some of those characters, they're very also like it's not called Santa. It's called Father Christmas because that's what
Father Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
and it is Saint Nick. It is Santa Claus, but that's the thing. It also felt really Australian. It was made by Australian people, based on Australian history, inspired by an Australian criminal, and so that's kind of fun too.
Well, even that Saint Nick, the Father Christmas mask looked like his lips were moving, his eyes were. I mean, there was a pretty decent technically.
Yeah,
they were crazy. Yeah. Well, all right. Well, good one. I'll recommend it. Because Rachel Ward swims naked and you're trying to see stuff, and
it's fun.
That woman is just stunning. Stunning.
Yeah, she's beautiful.
The voice, the whole thing. She's unbelievable. All right. Well, so the next one we want to do. This is a Ralph.
I have to tell you, I didn't bring any words.
No, because I told you earlier, this is going to be a one of these. This is going to be a Ralph's request. All right.
Nice.
Now, this is a film I've heard tons about. I'm not really sure I want to watch it, but we're going to do it. And it's called Audition. Now, I know you have... directed by... let's see if I can say this guy's name right.
Okay, go ahead.
Takashi Miike?
Halfway there. Takashi Miike. That's how you pronounce it.
Miike. Now, I know you have the Blu-ray. I got a DVD of this. Mm-hmm. I know this movie because I'm looking on the back. I'm even just looking on the back. 16 widescreen, select scene, director commentary, director introductions, Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments segment. Okay, so that tells me
it's crazy.
This is going to be wild.
Whatever you think, the only thing that you can't help it because you've heard of the movie, where the movie begins and where it ends, you can't say if you didn't know about it, you can't say that you had any expectation it was going to go there.
Really?
Other than the fact that it's directed by Takashi Miike, who does a lot of extreme movies like Ichi the Killer and a lot of different stuff. Although Ichi the Killer has a lot more semen and nipple trauma. But Audition is a really good movie, and there's one scene in particular, and you'll know it when you see it, where you're watching the movie and I remember when I first saw it, I was like, oh, wow, we are in trouble. Like, this is way more intense than I expect, like genuinely scary, intense.
Really?
And it's really good. And there's certain things that that they do storytelling wise that are just it's very smart. It's very clever. It's very disturbing. And it's probably got, I'll do a little research, but it's probably got a whole layer of specifically Japanese cultural things, because the audition is a guy basically looking for a girlfriend, and so he sets up an audition as if he's casting like a television show or something, but he's really looking for a girlfriend, which that's pretty shitty.
Right.
So sometimes people get punished for things.
So he deserves what he gets, is what you're saying.
You'll have to see, because it's quite a movie. But Takashi Miike is a really fascinating, prolific filmmaker. He's made over 100 movies, all different genres: Yakuza movies, musicals, comedies, action, horror. I don't know, whatever this one is. I mean, a lot of crazy stuff. So
I've never seen it.
We'll have a good discussion.
Am I saying I'm looking forward to seeing it? I'm not sure, but I will love to talk about it.
It is a very good movie.
Good.
It's not a movie for everyone, and it is not a movie for some of the other shows that we've done together, but it is a very good movie.
Well, there you go. It's Ralph's request.
I'll put it this way. I'm looking forward to watching it again. Kelly has seen it with me the first time. She said I can watch it again without her.
Oh, well, she's... So,
there you go.
I'll let you know how I feel once I see it. I
know you will.
I'm looking forward to it, so we'll see what happens.
Well, you requested it, so if you don't like it,
Ralph's request, R&R, a little R&R for the weekend, and we'll see how it goes. All right?
Sounds good.
All right, brother.
All right.
Listen, nice show. And keep watching some cult films. We're all about cult films. And we'll see you next week.
You got it, buddy.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.